So today we're going to read To Kill a Mockingbird chapter 6. Where we left off, remember Dill, Jim, and Scout, mainly Jim, was trying to leave a note on Boo Radley's window with a fishing pole. It's very windy, I don't know why I'm outside, but with a fishing pole trying to leave a note on Boo Radley's window so he would see it. Dill had a bell in his hand, and he was supposed to ring the bell if anybody was coming so they would know to stop their little game or whatever. And he did start ringing it, and we know it was because Atticus came home from work because he forgot a file. So he caught them trying to leave a note on Boo Radley's window, and so he told them to stop, and he basically kind of let them almost know that he knew that game they were playing, that Boo Radley game where they were acting out Boo Radley's life. He didn't really for sure say he knew that's what they were doing. He just kind of hinted at it. So this is chapter 6. Yes, said our father, when Jim asked him if we could go over and sit by Miss Rachel's fish pool with Dill, as this was his last night in Maycomb. Tell him so long for me, and we'll see him next summer. We leaped over the low wall that separated Miss Rachel's yard from our driveway. Jim whistled Bob White, and Dill answered in the darkness, like he's just calling him, and Dill is answering back that he knows, they're going. Not a breath blowing, said Jim. Look yonder. He pointed to the east. A gigantic moon was rising behind Miss Maudie's pecan trees. That makes it seem hotter, he said. Is a cross in it tonight? Asked Dill, not looking up. He was constructing a cigarette from newspaper and string. No, just the lady. Don't light that thing, Dill. You'll stink up the whole end of town. There was a lady in the moon in Maycomb. She sat at a dresser combing her hair. We're going to miss you, boy, I said. Reckon we better watch for Mr. Avery? Mr. Avery boarded across the street from Miss Henry Lafayette DuBose's house. Besides making change in the collection plate every Sunday, Mr. Avery sat on the porch every night until 9 o'clock and sneezed. One evening we were privileged to witness a performance by him which seemed to have been his positively last, for he never did it again so long as we watched. Jim and I were leaving Miss Rachel's front steps one night when Dill stopped us. Golly, look yonder. He pointed across the street. At first we saw nothing but a kudzu-covered front porch, but a closer inspection revealed an arc of water descending from the leaves and splashing in the yellow circle of the streetlight. Some 10 feet from source to earth, it seemed to us. Jim said Mr. Avery misfigured. Dill said he must drink a gallon a day, and the ensuing contest to determine relative distances and respective prowess only made me feel left out again, as I was untalented in this area. All right, look. So basically, Mr. Avery is one of their neighbors, and he sits on the porch all day. And one night they saw him peeing off the porch, and so they're waiting for him to do that again, just watching him. But he only did it one time. Dill stretched, yawned, and said altogether too casually, I know what, let's go for a walk. He sounded fishy to me. Nobody in Maycomb just went for a walk. Where to, Dill? Dill jerked his head in a southerly direction. Jim said, okay. And when I protested, he said sweetly, you don't have to come along, Angel May. You don't have to go, remember. Jim was not one to dwell on past defeats. It seemed the only message he got from Atticus was insight into the art of cross-examination. Scout, we ain't gonna do nothing. We're just going to the street light and back. We strolled silently down the sidewalk, listening to porch swings creaking with the weight of the neighborhood, listening to the soft murmurs of the grown people on our street. Occasionally we heard Miss Stephanie Crawford laugh. Well, said Dill. Okay, said Jim. Why don't you go home, Scout? What are you going to do? Dill and Jim were simply going to peep in the window of the loose shutter to see if they could get a look at Boo Radley. And if I didn't want to go with him, I could go straight home and keep my fat floppy mouth shut, and that was all. But why in the Sam Holy Hill did you wait till tonight? Because nobody could see them at night, because Atticus would be so deep in a book he wouldn't hear the kingdom coming, because if Boo Radley killed them, they'd miss school instead of vacation, and because it was easier to see inside a dark house in the dark than in daytime. Did I understand? Jim, please. Scout, I'm telling you for the last time, shut your trap or go home. I declare to the Lord, you're getting more like a girl every day. Look, these boys are going to try to peep in Boo Radley's window. So the whole letter writing thing didn't work. So there's a loose shutter on the window where they think they can look inside and see if they see him. With that, I had no option but to join them. We thought it was better to go under the high wire fence at the rear of the Radley lot. We stood less chance of being seen. The fence enclosed a large garden and a narrow wooden outhouse. Jim held up the bottom wire and motioned Dill under it. I followed and held up the wire for Jim. It was a tight squeeze. "Don't make a sound," he whispered. "Don't get in a row of collards. Whatever you do, they'll wake the dead." Like, we gotta be super quiet sneaking up to the house is what they're saying. With this thought in mind, I made perhaps 1 step per minute. I moved faster when I saw Jim far ahead beckoning in the moonlight. We came to the gate that divided the garden from the backyard. Jim touched it, and the gate squeaked. "Spit on it," whispered Dill. "You've got us in a box, Jim," I muttered. "We can't get out of here easy." "Shh, spit on it, Scout." We spat ourselves dry, and Jim opened the gate slowly, lifting it aside and resting it on the fence. We were in the backyard. See, they're spitting on the gate because it's a squeaky gate. So if they all spit on the hinges of it, they think it won't make noise. So they get inside the Radley yard. The back of the Radley house was even less inviting than the front. A ramshackle porch ran the width of the house. Instead of a column, a rough 2x4 supported one end of the roof. An old Franklin stove sat in a corner of the porch. Above it, a hat rack mirror caught the moon and shone eerily, so they're looking onto the Radley back porch. "Ugh," said Jim, lifting his foot. "What's the matter?" "Chickens," he breathed. That he would be obliged to, so he stepped in chicken stuff. That we would be obliged to dodge the unseen from all directions was confirmed when Dill ahead of us spelled out G-O-D in a whisper. We crept to the side of the house, around to the window with a hanging shutter. The sill was several inches taller than Jim. "Give you a hand up," he muttered to Dill. "Wait, though." Jim grabbed his left wrist and my right wrist. I grabbed my left wrist and Jim's right wrist, and we crouched, and Dill sat on our saddle. We raised him, and he caught the windowsill. So don't you see what they did? Jim and Scout, crossed their arms and held hands, and Dill sat on it, and they're trying to lift him up so he can look in the window because they're not tall enough to see in the window. "Hurry," Jim whispered. "We can't last much longer." Dill punched my shoulder, and we lowered him to the ground. "What'd you see?" "Nothing. Curtains. There's a little teeny light way off somewhere, though." "Let's get away from here," breathed Jim. "Let's go round in the back again." "Shh," he warned me as I was about to protest. "Let's try the back window." "Dill, no," I said. Dill stopped and let Jim go ahead. When Jim put his foot on the bottom step, the step squeaked. He stood still, then tried his weight by degrees. The step was silent. Jim skipped 2 steps, put his foot on the porch, heaved himself up, teetered a long moment, and regained his balance and dropped to his knees. He crawled to the window, raised his head, and looked in. Then I saw the shadow. It was a shadow of a man with a hat on. At first I thought it was a tree, but there was no wind blowing, and tree trunks never walked. The back porch was bathed in moonlight, and the shadow, crisp as toast, moved across the porch toward Jim. So look, they can tell, somebody's outside. You know how, imagine that somebody's on the front porch. This porch goes all the way around the house, and they're walking along, and then Scout and Jim and Dill are on the side, and they can see that shadow coming. So there's a shadow coming toward them. Dill saw it next. He put his hands to his face. When it crossed Jim, Jim saw it. He put his arms over his head and went rigid. The shadow stopped about a foot beyond Jim. Its arms came out from its side, dropped, and were still. Then it turned and moved back across Jim, walked along the porch, and off the side of the house, returning as it had come. So, they don't actually see a person yet. They just see that shadow. Jim leaped off the porch and galloped toward us. He flung open the gate, danced Dill and me through, and shooed us between 2 rows of swishing collards. Halfway through the collards, I tripped, so they're running through the garden trying to get to the gate to get out of this yard because somebody obviously caught them because they saw a shadow. As I tripped, the roar of a shotgun shattered the neighborhood. Dill and Jim dove beside me. Jim's breaths came in sobs. "Fence by the schoolyard! Hurry, Scout!" So look, somebody shot a gun. Maybe it's just a warning shot. Maybe the Radleys know somebody's at their property, and somebody fired a gun, though. So they're like, hurry, hurry, let's get to the fence by the school. Sorry. Jim held the bottom wire. Dill and I rolled through and were halfway to the shelter of the schoolyard's solitary oak when we sensed Jim was not with us. We ran back and found him struggling in the fence, kicking his pants off to get loose. He ran to the oak tree in his shorts. That would be like his underwear, because he had to take his pants off because they got caught in the barbed wire fence. Safely behind us, we gave way to numbness, but Jim's mind was racing. We got to get home. They'll miss us. We ran across the schoolyard, crawled under the fence to deer's pasture behind our house, climbed our back fence, and were at the back steps before Jim would let us pause to rest. Respiration normal, like they're trying to breathe normally. Three of us strolled as casually as we could to the front yard. So see, that would be like what if you just did that? You were trying to spy in your neighbor's house and your neighbor shot a gun and you're running back home and your parents are outside like, what happened? And you're just trying to walk back, like, not breathe hard, like, what? Like you don't even know what just happened. So they're trying to breathe normal and act like they weren't the ones that caused that. We looked down the street and saw a circle of neighbors at the Radley front gate. "We better go down there," said Jim. "They'll think it's funny if we don't show up." Mr. Nathan Radley was standing inside his gate, a shotgun broken across his arm. Atticus was standing beside Miss Maudie and Miss Stephanie Crawford. Miss Rachel and Mr. Avery were nearby. None of them saw us come up. We eased in beside Miss Maudie, who looked around. "Where were you all? Didn't you hear the commotion?" "What happened?" asked Jim. "Mr. Radley shot at a Negro in his collared patch." "Oh, did he hit him?" "No," said Miss Stephanie. "Shot in the air. Scared him, though. Says if anybody's seen him around, that's the one. Says he's got the other barrel waiting for the next sound he hears in that patch. And next time he won't aim high. Jim Finch." "Ma'am?" asked Jim. Atticus spoke. "Where are your pants, son?" "Pants, sir?" "Pants." It was no use. In his shorts before God and everybody. I sighed. Remember, Jim lost his pants in the fence, and now he's standing there with no pants on, just trying to act like everything's fine. And they're like, "Where are your pants?" Mr. Finch?" In the glare from the streetlight, I could see Dill hatching one. His eyes widened and his fat cherub face grew rounder. "What is it, Dill?" asked Atticus. I won them from him," he said vaguely. "Won them? How?" Dill's hand sought the back of his head. He brought it forward and across his forehead. "We were playing strip poker up yonder by the fish pool," he said. Jim and I relaxed. The neighbors seemed satisfied. They all stiffened. But what was strip poker? We had no chance to find out. Miss Rachel went off like the town fire siren. "Do Jesus, Dill Harris, gambling by my fish pool? I'll strip poker you, sir." Atticus saved Dill from immediate dismemberment. "Just a minute, Miss Rachel," he said. "I've never heard of them doing that before. Were you all playing cards?" Because, see, like, they thought, like, in this time period, that would have been bad for kids to be playing with cards. That was seen as something like the just bad kids did. "Were you all playing cards?" Jim fielded Dill's fly with his eyes shut. That means, like, no, he made up another lie to cover that. "No, sir, just with matches." I admired my brother. Matches were dangerous, but cards were fatal. "Jim and Scout," said Atticus, "I don't want to hear of poker in any form again. Go buy Dill's and get your pants, Jim. Settle it yourselves." "Don't worry, Dill," said Jim, as we trotted up the sidewalk. "She ain't gonna get you. He'll talk her out of it. That was fast thinking, son. Listen, you hear?" We stopped and heard Atticus's voice. "Not serious. They all go through it, Miss Rachel." Dill was comforted, but Jim and I weren't. There was a problem of Jim showing up some pants in the morning. Look, this is the last day of summer, and in this, in the 1930s, they didn't have a bunch of clothes. Jim needs his pants, because he's got to wear them to school tomorrow, and they're stuck in a fence, a barbed wire fence, all tangled up. So the problem is, we got to go back in the Radley yard and get the boys' pants. Had Jim's I'd give you some of mine, said Dill, as we came to Miss Rachel's steps. Jim said he couldn't get in them, but thanks anyway. We said goodbye, and Dill went inside the house. He evidently remembered he was engaged to me, for he ran back and kissed me in front of Jim. "You all right? You here?" he bawled after us. So here's Dill. It's the end of summer. He's got to get on the train and go back to Meridian, Mississippi, where he lives all school year. He just comes in the summer, remember. Had Jim's pants been safely on him, we would not have slept much anyway. Every night sound I heard from my cot on the back porch was magnified threefold. Remember, she already said in the summer they sleep on cots on their porch. It would be like You know what a cot is. Like, they're just doing that for fun in the screened-in back porch for the summer. And she's saying, like, every shadow, every sound, she thought it was Boo Radley coming to get them because they were trying to look in his window tonight. Every scratch of feet on gravel was Boo Radley seeking revenge. Everyone passing, laughing in the night was Boo Radley, loose and after us. Insects splashing against the screen were Boo Radley's insane fingers picking the wire to pieces. The chinaberry trees were malignant, hovering, and alive. That's like the shadow of the trees over their screen porch, like, were scary looking. I lingered between sleep and wakefulness until I heard Jim murmur, "You sleep, little Three Eyes?" "Are you crazy?" "Shh, Atticus's light is out." In the waning moonlight, I saw Jim swing his feet to the floor. "I'm going after him," he said. I sat upright. "You can't. I won't let you." He was struggling into his shirt. "I've got to." "You do, and I'll wake Atticus." "You do, and I'll kill you." I pulled him down beside me on the cot. I tried to reason with him. "Mr. Nathan's going to find him in the morning, Jim. He knows you lost him. When he shows them to Atticus, it'll be pretty bad. That's all there is to it. Go back to bed." So here's Jim. He's like, "Atticus is asleep. He'll never know. I'm going to go back and get my pants out of the fence." And Scout's like, "Listen, Mr. Nathan, not Boo. Boo is the 30-year-old younger brother. Nathan is his older brother that lives there. He's in charge of the house now." She's like, "Look, Nathan will find him tomorrow. He'll show him to Atticus. You will get in trouble, but it won't be horrible. It won't be like getting killed, which is probably what you're about to do." "That's what I know," said Jim. "That's why I'm going after him." I began to feel sick. Going back to that place by himself, I remembered Miss Stephanie. Mr. Nathan had the other barrel waiting for the next round he heard. Jim knew that better than I. So see, she's afraid that Jim's going to get shot when he goes back over there to get his pants out of the fence. I was desperate. "Look, it ain't worth it, Jim. A licking hurts, but it doesn't last. You'll get your head shot off, Jim. Please." He blew out his breath patiently. "It's like this, Scout," he muttered. "Atticus ain't with me since I can remember. I want to keep it that way." This was a thought. It seemed that Atticus threatened us every other day. "You mean he's never caught you at anything?" "Maybe so, but I want to keep it that way, Scout. We shouldn't have done that tonight, Scout." It was then, I suppose, that Jim and I first began to part company. Sometimes I did not understand him, but my periods of bewilderment were short-lived. This was beyond me, though. "Please, can't you just think about it for a minute? By yourself on that place?" "Shut up." "It's not like he'd never speak to you again or something. I'm going to wake him, Jim, I swear." Jim grabbed my pajama collar and wrenched it tight. "Then I'm going with you," I choked. "No, you ain't. You'll just make noise." It was no use. I unlatched the back door and held it while he crept down the steps. It must have been 2 o'clock, so it's 2 o'clock in the morning when he's trying to sneak back over there and get his pants. The moon was setting, and the latticework shadows were fading into fuzzy nothingness. Jim's white shirt tail dipped and bobbed like a small ghost, dancing away to escape the coming morning. Sorry, it is probably a tornado right now. Okay, sorry. A faint breeze stirred and cooled the sweat running down my sides. He went the back way through Deer's pasture, across the schoolyard, and around to the fence. I thought at least that was the way he was headed. It would take longer, so it was not time to worry yet. I waited until I thought it was time to worry and listened for Mr. Radley's shotgun. Then I thought I heard the back fence squeak, but that was wishful thinking. Then I heard Atticus cough. I held my breath, because look, we don't need Atticus to wake up and realize what Jim is doing, because then they're really all going to get in trouble. Sometimes when we made a midnight pilgrimage to the bathroom, we would find him reading. He said he often woke up during the night, checked on us, and read himself back to sleep. I waited for his light to go on, straining my eyes to see it flood the hall. It stayed off, and I breathed again. The night crawlers had retired, but ripe chinaberries drummed on the roof when the wind stirred, and the darkness was desolate with the barking of distant dogs. There he was, returning to me. His white shirt bobbed over the back fence and slowly grew larger. He came up the back steps, latched the door behind him, and sat on his cot. Wordlessly, he held up his pants. He lay down, and for a while I heard his cot trembling. Soon he was still. I did not hear him stir again. Alright, so the good news after all that is that Jim got his pants back. So school starts tomorrow, summer's over, school starts back, Jim's got his pants. Alright, so Next is chapter 7, and we'll try that one tomorrow. And y'all have a good